Well, have you ever heard of FISA Section 702? So this is set to expire at the end of the year, and it's it's important for Americans to know about. It's being debated right now amongst legislators. They're trying to decide whether or not they're going to renew FISA 702, which is given the federal government the ability to spy on foreigners while they're away. But of course, whenever we give them the ability to spy on somebody else, what do they end up doing? They spy on us, and that is what's happened with FISA 702. So first of all, let me explain what it is. What is FISA 702 exactly? The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, Section 702. This was brought forward when with technology advancements. What happened was there's a lot of foreign nationals who are on foreign soil, but they're using American tech to communicate. So they're using American email or messaging services, or a variety of ways to communicate. And these are American-based companies. These are foreign nationals on foreign soil. So the spies wanted to go and they wanted something that addressed this particular issue, because you're dealing with an American-based company and American-based tech, but you're dealing with foreigners on foreign land, and they're allowed to be spied on according to U.S. Constitution. They're not protected by the Constitution. So the government granted the spies this section, which basically allowed them to broadly spy on a variety of foreigners using American technology without having to go to the FISA courts every single time. So it gave them more of this broad, like you could do it by topic. So you could go and say, well, we want to spy on foreigners who might be engaged in Russian collusion. We want to spy on foreigners who may be engaged in Chinese spying or something. So they have all these different things that they want to talk about. And they go to the FISA courts. Okay, fine. So they're allowed to do this. The problem with it is that Jim Jordan exposed last year that in the year of 2022 alone, that in a 1-year time period, the FBI conducted 204,000 searches on Americans using the data that was collected under Section 702. So, they're sitting there, well, what did you expect us to do with that data? Not use it? They collected this data legally using the FISA courts on foreigners. But of course, what happens? Foreigners, what do? They interact with Americans, and they're exchanging phone calls, emails, text messages with Americans. And when these spies were spying on these foreigners, they were also collecting inadvertently American, or maybe they meant to do it. They were collecting American data. Then what the FBI would do is they would go and they'd say, well, we got all this data. So they would do these search queries, and they would look for Americans in those search queries, and then they would go and try to nab Americans for this. Now, the FBI says, oh, come on, we really didn't do it that. We didn't mean to. I don't know how you accidentally do that. They were like, we didn't really mean to do it, and we put some provisions in place, and so now we're not really doing that anymore. But this is actually Christopher Wray testifying as to why the FBI needs to continue doing this. And he says, look, there's everywhere he sees is terrorism. So he's talking, Lindsey Graham's questioning him. Lindsey Graham's on the side of, we need more surveillance. He says, we should have some provisions on this, but we got to renew FISA 702 because this has really helped us go after China and Russia and, all the places that Lindsey Graham's hoping we go to war with. So here's Christopher Wray saying, I see blinking red lights everywhere. You'll know what I mean when you hear this.
So what I would say that is unique about the environment that we're in right now in my career is that while there may have been times over the years where individual threats could have been higher here or there than where they might be right now, I've never seen a time where all the threats, or so many of the threats, are all elevated all at exactly the same time. That's what makes this environment that we're in now so fraught, and why funding our men and women who are working shoulder to shoulder with state and local law enforcement and other partners every day makes it even more important, not less.
So, blinking red lights analogy about 9/11, all the lights were blinking red before 9/11. Apparently, obviously, all of us missed it. Would you say that there's multiple blinking red lights out there?
I see blinking lights everywhere I turn.
Yeah, of course you do. And that is why the FBI is spying on everybody. whether you be a Catholic American who's just pro-life or you be actually a foreign potential spy or enemy or whatever, right? So he sees blinking red lights everywhere, and he says, I've never seen a time where all of the threats are elevated all at the same time. So we're living in this really, it's treacherous right now, according to Christopher Wray, FBI Director Christopher Wray. Not everybody is buying this. Senator Mike Lee from Utah is not buying this. He's very much on the side of, guys, you got to get a warrant. So it seems to be very basic, but that is what the squabble is about. Section 702 is up for renewal. The question is, I don't think the question is whether or not they will renew it. They will renew Section 702. The question is, what kind of provisions, if any, are they going to put around 702 to prevent 204,000 Americans being unlawfully searched? Some senators want to just extend it and deal with it later. They just want to kick the can down the road. Some say the FBI is doing a good enough job. They told us that that they investigated themselves and that they've put provisions on themselves, and we should just trust them. And some say, no, we need to demand that if they're going to be searching, that they get warrants. They need to get a warrant. Now, the FBI says, well, that would slow things down. I mean, you can't ask us to get warrants. It's going to take us forever to do investigations. And yeah, I mean, could you imagine a warrantless world? Every cop would love it, saying, well, I could just get my investigations done real quick. I can go anywhere I want and do whatever I want without a warrant. Yes, warrants slow things down, but warrants also protect our civil liberties, and that's why we don't want warrantless searches. We want them to go get a warrant if they're going to search us. Well, here's Mike Lee really laying into FBI Director Christopher Wray.
Don't worry about it. We've got this taken care of. We've got new procedures. It's going to be different now. It's never different. You haven't changed. And you keep referring to these policies, these new procedures. We haven't seen that. We're not even allowed to have access to it. And we have absolutely no reason to trust you because you haven't behaved in a manner that's trustworthy. You can't even, as we sit here, tell me that people who intentionally, knowingly, deliberately violated the civil rights of American citizens, that they were fired or that they had their security clearance stripped. Now, in 2022, FBI and other agencies searched Americans' communications over 200,000 times, only 16 of which were evidence of a crime-only searches that returned information. I'd like to ask you to give a yes or a no answer to these questions. Were the three related batch queries consisting of over 23,000 separate queries relating to the events of January 6th, were those evidence of a crime-only queries, yes or no?
I don't know the answer to that.
The answer is no. I do know the answer. The answer is no. Were there 141 queries for the activists arrested in connection with the George Floyd protests here in Washington, D.C., evidence of a crime-only queries?
Those were non-compliant queries, and again, they all predate the reforms that we've put in place, which
echo other reforms that other FBI directors have told me about every darn year. How about the 19,000 donors to a political campaign? The answer there is no. What about the query for a sitting member of Congress? The answer there is no. What about the query involving a U.S. Senator, which for all we know could be any one of us? The answer is no. And so what does that tell me? Well, what I'm hearing and what these data points all point to is that a warrant requirement or prohibition relating to quote-unquote evidence of a crime-only queries would not have been something that would have prevented any of the most egregious examples of the abuse that we've seen under Section 702. So the FBI is already required to obtain a court order in some circumstances before accessing the contents of Americans' communications in the context of 702. They're already required for that in some circumstances. Since 2018, how many times has that requirement been triggered, according to government reporting? Do you know?
You're talking about the so-called F2?
Yes.
Yeah, how many times has it been triggered?
Yes.
I think there have been 2 instances where I think is maybe the number.
103 times it's been triggered. And out of those 103 identified times, the FBI should have obtained a court order. How many times did the FBI actually obtain one? Do you know?
That, I think the answer is none.
0. So you're telling me that the FBI has completely ignored the limited court order requirement that it's already subjected to. You have the audacity to come here, and you told us that adding a warrant requirement to 702, even for queries involving U.S. persons on U.S. soil, that would amount to some sort of unilateral disarmament. You have a lot of gall, sir. This is disgraceful. The Fourth Amendment requires more than that, and you know it.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. I mean, this is like pretty basic stuff that they need a warrant if they're going to be searching Americans, that they cannot continue to do warrantless searches. And the FBI basically is saying, trust us. We investigated ourselves. We made some improvements, and we've got new protocols. So we don't need you to tell us that we have to get warrants to search Americans. We've got new protocols, and you should just trust us. Well, we don't trust you. And we absolutely should be calling on our senators to demand that 702 have a warrant, that there needs to be a warrant requirement attached to 702 when they intend to search Americans. It's pretty basic stuff. They've been able to get away with abusing our civil liberties and getting around things because of 9/11. And they say, well, we have to, but it's been a very long time since 9/11, over 20 years. We cannot allow them to continue abusing these types of powers. It's a simple demand. Call your senators, write your senators, and say, we demand that you do not kick the can down the road. Some of them want to kick the can down the road and just say, well, we'll just extend it for now because we're kind of in a rush. It's expiring at the end of the year. So, to keep us spying on Russia and China and Iran and everybody, we'll just keep this going for now. But say to your senators, no, we do not want you to kick this can down the road. We do not want you to agree that the FBI has done enough and we should just trust them. We want you to demand that if you're going to renew Section 702, it comes with a warrant requirement, a basic warrant, a basic constitutional right for all American citizens. That's what we want. We want to roll back all these abuses that have happened since September 11th, and one of them being warrantless searches against Americans. So